Hello everyone. I have a problem and I don't know how to proceed. Here's the situation. My parents cut me off last year. It's been a little over a year now. This isn't the first time. They also ditched me 2 years ago for a few months. They came back to talk, and at first it seemed like things were patched up. But of course they weren't. A bit about them. My father tormented my mother for most of my life. She was always under his thumb, and we lived in constant dread. But that was brushed off as fine because we had cash, went on trips, and had all the material stuff we needed. Beyond the physical aggression, I didn't fully grasp how deep the mental damage went until I met my long-term boyfriend. Being with him opened my eyes to just how messed up my parents' treatment of me was. Relentless control, non-stop put-downs, acting like I was 12 when I was 20. For the first time, I started pushing back and acting like an adult. At first, they got along with my boyfriend, but that faded. My boyfriend and I had our struggles. Fights, breakups, but we worked through them together. The first major clash hit when my boyfriend moved in with me in the city. This didn't fit my father's rules, meaning we didn't grovel for his approval in person at his place, though we did call. My boyfriend took over rent so my parents couldn't hold anything over me, since I was still a student. Later, we decided to ditch the city and move to a rural spot where my boyfriend inherited a rundown house. We wanted to fix it up and make it ours. That's when my parents cut me off again. They eventually crawled back, and after a lot of nonsense, we made peace. But then they kicked off another round of mind games and verbal assaults, trashing where I lived, mocking me, saying I'd be stuck tending animals and turn into a brainless hick despite my degree. They called me trash, claimed my boyfriend had me brainwashed, maybe even doped up, and on and on. During this, my boyfriend and I had a massive blowout and I stormed out. There was a ton of shouting, but no fists. My parents swooped in to rescue me, and I moved back with them. They were thrilled. Things were calm for a bit until my boyfriend contacted my father, explaining he'd told me to leave because our place was a wreck. No heat, no bathroom, nothing. My father flipped out, saying my boyfriend had no business calling him. My boyfriend then called me and I went to see him. I wanted to bring him home so we could all hash it out, but my father said my boyfriend could only grovel at his feet before getting booted. He gave me an ultimatum: walk out and never come back or stay and ghost my boyfriend completely. I freaked out, broke down, and blocked my boyfriend, who was waiting outside for me. For a month, we were radio silent. I moved in with my sister in a bigger town near my boyfriend. One day, he showed up just to hand me a letter and see me one last time. That's when I unblocked him and we started talking now and then. Eventually, I realized I wanted to give it another shot with him. When I told my parents, they threatened to disown me again. They swore he'd rough me up, toss me out like garbage, that I'd end up on the streets, and they started spewing venom. I stayed quiet. Then it hit me: why do they think they can dictate who a 23-year-old woman sees or reconciles with? It's unhinged. Meanwhile, they'd flip between treating me like royalty or a doormat. 1 second, it was, "You don't have to cook, you've done enough," and the next, "Why aren't you cooking? You're just loafing around." If I cooked, it was, "What? Just that?" If I made more, it was, "That's pathetic." My sister started snooping on me and handed me a cleaning chart. My parents popped in unannounced twice a week. That's when it clicked. Our relationship was toxic. It's not normal for someone to micromanage a grown woman's life. What if I wanted to move, switch jobs? Would they think they could veto that too? Just like my whole childhood, stuck in their shadow, terrified to even sneeze wrong. So, I told them I was getting back with him. Their reply: "You'll only step foot here again in a box or on a gurney." They called me a junkie, unhinged, cursed everything they ever did for me, and said their doors were slammed shut, even if my boyfriend trashed me or left me homeless. I just said, fine. Within days, I was out. They warned everyone not to speak to me. They hounded my grandparents, checked their phones, rifled through their messages, and screamed at them. My aunts eventually reached out, and when I saw my mother at a family wedding, I nodded, but she blanked me. My sister cut me off too because I told her I wouldn't call her, to shield her from their wrath. But I'd always pick up if she called. I missed one call and she never tried again. My grandparents secretly visited me, but my father found out because he's got spies in the village watching me. Now, the twist: my mother has cancer. She had her uterus removed and is recovering. My grandparents are pushing for us to make up, and they slipped her my new number. My parents now claim they're cool with my boyfriend. I get why my grandparents want harmony, but I can't wipe away everything they said, or the year I spent totally isolated. During that time, my boyfriend and I have battled rising costs and inflation, but we made our choice and we're okay with it. Still, thinking of my parents just fuels my rage. A few days ago, my mother texted, "I think enough time has passed, and it would be nice to meet and talk. I've been home resting, so why not?" If you feel the same, let me know. Mom, I replied, I heard what happened. I hope you recover soon. If you want to talk, we can, but I don't see where that conversation would lead. Time alone won't erase everything you said to me without a solid reason. She shot back, it wasn't right on either side. If you want to talk, let me know. That response ticked me off. I haven't answered in 10 days. I never slung mud back or clapped back at their insults, but they dragged my name through the dirt and disrespected me completely. I thought that was it, but today she texted again, asking to meet in a nearby town. My boyfriend says I should go since it can't get worse. I'm thinking about it, just to stop their nonstop calls and texts and hear them out, but it makes me sick with nerves. I hate confrontation, and I don't know how to deal with it. I'm scared they'll twist me up again, and I'll fall back into the same trap. What do you think? I know this is a lot and you don't have the full story, but please help me see this clearer. Everyone around me just says, do what feels right, or asks if I could handle never seeing them again if something happened to them. But I don't even know how to process what's happening now, let alone some what if down the road. I feel lost and swamped. It's so unfair that everyone expects me to bend, to visit, to talk, to swallow my pride, when I'm the only one who got crushed. Stepdad cheats on my mom, so we get revenge. Initials for clarity. Me, 24M me. My mother, 50F mom. My brother, 23M bro. My sister, 30F sis. Cheating stepdad, 45M Chris. Stepdad's coworker, 25F Betty. The other woman, -40F Darla. This might be a long one, apologies in advance. I moved in with my mom after her 25-year marriage to my bio dad crashed and burned. He was a controlling jerk, but that's a different tale. Shortly after the divorce, my mom introduced me to her boyfriend at the time, Chris. Now, my mom worked as a corrections officer at the county jail. Chris was a former inmate, locked up for a DUI. That should have been a glaring warning, but my mom was reeling from her wrecked marriage, and I didn't want to stir the pot. Chris seemed to lift her spirits, and that was enough for me. Me, bro, and sis all moved in with mom and Chris, and things seemed decent. Chris and I bonded over our love of video games, and it felt all right. That is, until 2017. Because of his DUI, Chris had to check in regularly for probation at the courthouse. One day, he didn't come back, and we started to freak out. Then we got a call from him, from Texas. Turns out, when he showed up at the courthouse, the FBI ambushed him. His family in Texas was tangled up in a mess of gang and drug-related crimes, and since he was in a car during a drug deal, he was on the hook too. He cut a deal to testify against his family for a lighter sentence and was allowed out before the trial. My mom was a wreck, but over a year of phone calls, they hashed out marriage plans for when he returned. His boss at the DQ where he worked even let him reclaim his store manager gig. Then the drinking kicked in. With his DUI history, Chris clearly wasn't new to booze, but it ramped up hard. He was downing half a 24-pack of beer a day. Chris was a nasty drunk. He'd pick fights when hammered, and while he never threw punches, his tongue was vicious. My mom let it slide for years, claiming work stress and the upcoming trial were getting to him. Finally, after too long, my mom hit her limit. Chris stumbled home plastered one night, and she called him out. She asked if he'd been drinking, and when he didn't deny it, she booted him out. He crashed with a buddy temporarily. The next morning, Mom had us grab his essentials so he wouldn't step foot in the house until he sobered up. While we were packing his stuff, someone knocked. It was Betty, a coworker of Chris's I knew from high school. She had something heavy to drop on my mom. After sitting Mom down and swearing her to secrecy about the source, Betty spilled it. Chris was cheating with Darla. He'd been sneaking around with Darla, getting frisky in and around his workplace. Betty caught them, and Chris threatened to fire her if she snitched. He was the manager, after all. And the kicker? Darla was pregnant. My mom was livid. Once the shock faded, she told us to grab all of Chris's junk and chuck it outside. We hauled everything he owned into the alley behind the house. He had no claim to come back. The place was rented in Mom's name only, so no hassle there. Then she called and confronted him. He owned up to the whole affair, gloating that Darla's pregnancy meant he'd finally have a kid of his own. Mom refused more kids. Us three nearly broke her body, and she couldn't handle another. He wouldn't apologize for a thing. Mom arranged for him to pick up his trash from the alley with a cop watching, and he was gone. The revenge. Mom wanted to wash her hands of him and move on. She was already drained from the ordeal and didn't want more drama. But sis, bro, and I weren't done. First, we hit up his workplace. DQ's a franchise, and the owner of this branch ran several nearby. He was also a solid guy. We told him about the sleazy acts going down at the store, and he started the process to kick Chris out and ban him from all his locations. Funny twist. Betty snagged his job and now runs a tight, clean crew. Chris was jobless and homeless, so he shacked up with Darla an hour away. We learned he got a gig at another DQ there, so we tipped off that owner too. It took longer since he wasn't pulling anything shady there, but he eventually got canned again. Soon after, Chris started creeping around our neighborhood, probably stalking us over his job losses. Here's the thing, with his Texas mess, his DUI probation never lifted, meaning no license. He didn't need to drive with us since work was close and we'd shuttle him. But now he was cruising solo when he had no right. We called the cops, told them about Darla's car lurking around, and said we were pretty sure Chris was behind the wheel, unlicensed. We suggested they pull it over next time it showed up. Sure enough, weeks later, they nabbed him, driving drunk, no less, and hauled him back to jail. The police searched Darla's place too and found guns. As a felon, Chris couldn't legally have them, so that piled on more jail time. By the time he got out, it was just in time to head back to Texas for the trial. Chris's kid was born while he was locked up. Darla apparently woke up to what a total creep he was and ditched him during his stint. While inside, Chris started flooding my mom with letters, apologizing, begging her back, then ranting it wasn't his fault, all in the same breath. Mom torched everyone. We moved on, relocating out of state. Chris got out years ago and now flops around in Kansas, scrambling and dodging child support Darla sued him for. Mom's got a new boyfriend who treats her right and cares more than Chris ever could. Bro and sis moved out, and I'm still with Mom, helping fix up our new house. Life's decent now. A coworker's chat about cheaters jogged this memory, so I figured I'd share it here for kicks. Edit. Formatting. AITA for ignoring my dad while his stepson is dying from cancer? To start, I, 16M, haven't been to my dad's house in 3 years. But now his stepson, 17M, is terminally ill, and I'm not even replying to my dad's texts or calls. I knew my dad's stepson Shane before my dad married his mom. Shane was always a rotten kid. He got into trouble a ton when we were younger, but in 2nd grade, he started tormenting my best friend. Shane got suspended for pounding my best friend into the ground. I got hauled to the principal's office a few times for holding Shane back or swinging at him to protect my friend. I never got suspended, just detention, which my mom thought was insane and fought the school over. They wanted me to stand there like an idiot waiting for a teacher instead of stopping Shane from smashing my friend. Shane messed with other kids too, but not physically like with my best friend. One of those kids got shipped off to another city to escape him. My best friend switched schools and Mom and Dad let me transfer too. It was Mom's idea. Shane got kicked out of that school because his harassment of the last kid got nastier, and he ended up back at the same school as me and my friend. Then I found out my dad was dating Shane's mom. Dad lectured me dozens of times about his relationship with her, saying I had to play nice when we were together and keep my beef with Shane out of family stuff. I argued back, telling him I'd never accept Shane and he'd never be family. My mom was revolted when she heard about it and warned that Shane might turn his venom on me next. Dad brushed it off, saying he loved Shane's mom and wouldn't let kid drama wreck a good thing. I despised my dad for that, and I've been furious ever since. When he married Shane's mom, I lost it that morning so I wouldn't have to be at the wedding. Dad just got pissed and said I was acting like a brat, that Shane wasn't throwing tantrums, and we were going to be brothers and family. Shane was still harassing and hurting my best friend, and I'd stand up to him. Shane's mom would drag my dad in when we clashed at his place. I told Dad I wouldn't be civil to Shane or let anyone think he was decent. Shane's mom claimed he had issues from his dad ditching him, making him lash out, but insisted he was good underneath. I told her Shane was a beast, which upset her and enraged my dad. He said, "You don't trash family like that." I told my dad I'd rather be gone than call Shane family. I meant it. I was 12 then. After that blowout, I begged Mom to let me live with her, so she took it to a judge for full custody. The judge sent me and Dad to therapy for 6 months, but when nothing changed, she ruled I could stay with Mom. Dad hated it, and the judge told him she'd rather give Mom custody than see me locked up, since the fights weren't stopping and his house was a toxic mess. She ordered contact between us, but not at his place. Like I said, it's been 3 years since I stepped foot there. 7 months ago, Shane got cancer. Dad wanted me to drop the grudge and work on being a family, but the diagnosis didn't move me. Every time we talked, he'd bring it up. Then 3 months ago, they learned the cancer was terminal. Shane's got a year or less. Dad said he needed me. That time was running out to make peace with Shane. He pushed hard, saying I had to prove I was a good person with a heart. After that, I stopped answering and started ghosting him. Dad tried reaching me through Mom, but she shut it down hard and said no. Dad leaves voicemail sobbing, saying he needs me, misses me, doesn't want to lose me, that his heart's shattering for Shane and the loss coming, and he's never needed me more. I don't care. I still hate him for his choices, and I won't miss Shane or fake like I do. He'd still be tormenting kids right now if he wasn't sick. He was doing it until he ditched school for treatment. And I don't think I'll ever want my dad back in my life. He picked Shane. He didn't give a darn about anything else. By chasing a good thing with his wife, he chose Shane over me, and he chose a monster. AITA for ignoring my dad right now, and so everyone knows where I stand. When Shane dies, I won't go to Dad's house to prop him up or show up at the funeral. I won't join any tribute for Shane or anything. That's how deep this runs. But maybe that makes me the jerk. AITA for grossly humiliating my boyfriend in front of his whole family after he engagement pranked me? Advice needed. My F40, now ex-boyfriend, Keith M38. And I had issues because of his non-stop pranks. He's obsessed with making his targets look like fools. I warned him over and over that I don't forgive easily, and he was torching my trust. He brushed it off with a laugh, and I kept giving him chances because he had some decent qualities. He's hilarious without pranks, pretends to listen well, and used to show me respect. But those traits started fading, and I don't know why. Things shifted. Maybe showing him love made him think he could get away with this garbage? We never had blowouts, just disagreements, and I'd shut down if I was really hurt. It happened twice. First time came out of nowhere. We went to a gala thrown by our city council. I'm putting gala in quotes because it's not a big city. People love these events, but they're not some elite, untouchable affair. He loved how they treated us. I was the invitee, he was my +1, and asked if I could snag him an interview to pitch his small business idea to them. I didn't promise anything but got him a meeting I tagged along for. On the way back, we hit a deli and ran into my ex. We're on good terms. Keith flipped out because I returned my ex's hello, claiming I was too chummy and disrespectful. That rant lasted 10 minutes. We got to my place with takeout, and he immediately spewed nasty junk about my best friend. I called him out for trying to rile me up. He laughed at first, but when I asked what was so funny, he stormed off with his food. We talked later, but days after, I realized he never properly owned up. Second time, he trashed my outfit, saying I looked like a clown. I should have dumped him right then, but I shoved it aside. I had too much going on with work and family. I clung to hope we'd get back to how things were. I couldn't shake the sting, though, even when we hit a calmer stretch. Then the pranks fired up again. First, I caught him hiding the birthday cake I got for my friend. Then he gunned the gas pedal a few times as I tried to get in his car. Last week, we were at his mom's for his birthday party. Everything felt fine until the room went dead quiet. It was eerie. I looked at him and he dropped to one knee. Worst feeling ever. 1, we weren't anywhere near engagement territory. 2, I figured it was a prank but didn't know how to play it. Did he tell everyone he was proposing? Were they quiet from real excitement? Or did they know it was a stunt? Or maybe only some did. If it was real, I didn't want to reject him in front of his family, so I'd probably have said yes then nixed it privately. If it was a prank, he'd humiliate me in front of 20+ people. So I asked what he was doing. He said I was watching him and I knew. I said no, I didn't, but he doubled down. I said fine, show me the box and I'd react based on that. He looked rattled. Maybe he realized he'd messed up. Maybe he wanted to push it further. I'll never know. But it screamed trouble. He opened it, a beer can tab. I let him have it right there. I said he took a knee to hand me trash, just like he groveled to people to peddle his cheap, pointless LLC and his pathetic services he barely understands. I threw in how he got canned from 2 jobs and said I totally get why he couldn't afford a real ring. I asked if he seriously thought I'd marry a overgrown brat? His family was ticked. Some looked uneasy. Others acted like I'd crossed a line. He tried to apologize, but I told him to shove it where the sun doesn't shine and we were through. It was a total mess. I had no escape plan. I didn't expect to storm out and didn't have my car. His cousins trailed me, begging me to see he didn't mean to hurt me and that walking home alone was risky. I trudged 30 minutes before snagging an Uber. I posted on Facebook explaining why I snapped and that I couldn't picture myself with a lowlife. His brother's girlfriend and I get along. She's straight up and fair. She checked on me, saying she and her boyfriend had no part in it and that I had every right to be furious. But she added that, while she's never liked Keith, true, blasting him as a jobless loser in front of his family was overkill and threw them off. I asked what she thought I should do, since I'm not lifting a finger to make him feel better, end of story. And if he dares contact me, I'll make it sting even worse, if he's even capable of feeling it. Honestly, I'm mortified. I stood my ground, but maybe I went too far. Maybe I should have just turned and bolted. Was I over the top here? AITA for kicking my girlfriend and stepbrother out after I found out they cheated on me? So, I, 25M, recently discovered that my girlfriend, 24F, betrayed me with my stepbrother, 26M. I was totally blindsided by this bombshell. I'd always trusted both of them, and learning they were sneaking around behind my back crushed me. When I confronted them, they didn't even bother denying it. I was raging and gutted. After a blazing argument, I decided to boot them both out of my house. I felt like I had to stand up for myself and not let them trample me in my own space. Now things get messy. My mom, 50F, is seriously torn up about it. She's been bawling and saying I should have handled it differently, that family matters, and I should have tried to sort it out instead of tossing them out. She's also freaking out about how this will wreck our family vibe going forward. I get that my mom's trying to keep the peace, but I can't shake the feeling I did what I had to do to shield myself. I'm still reeling and processing it all, and I don't think I could have just let them stay after that betrayal. So, AITA for kicking them out and making my mom cry? Should I have done it another way? Hey everyone, I just wanted to thank you all for the support and advice on my original post. It really helped me wrestle with everything going down. After I kicked my girlfriend and stepbrother out, I took some time to chill and think it over. I realized I needed to talk to my mom about how I felt. I sat her down and laid it out. While I get her family concerns, I had to put my own mental health and sanity first. I told her their backstabbing was a massive blow, and I couldn't just shrug it off. To my shock, she was more understanding than I thought. She admitted she was upset not just about the mess itself, but because she felt stuck in the middle. We hashed out how crucial it is for me to set boundaries, and she agreed I had every right to guard myself from that kind of pain. As for my ex-girlfriend and stepbrother, I haven't spoken to them since that day. I've been focusing on myself, hanging with friends, and trying to heal. It's been rough, but I'm starting to feel better bit by bit. I appreciate all the tips about self-care and moving forward. I'm still piecing it together, but I feel stronger about making choices that work for me. Thanks again for the backup. Hey everyone, I wanted to drop another update because things have taken a wild turn. So, my ex-girlfriend hit me up recently. She messaged me saying she's pregnant. I was floored by this curveball. She didn't give much detail, just said she's clueless about what to do and wants to talk. Honestly, I'm a mess of emotions right now. Part of me is stunned, and another part is just furious and hurt all over again. I never saw myself in this spot, especially after everything that went down. I haven't replied yet. I'm still chewing over how I feel and what this means for my future. I know I need to think hard about how to tackle this, especially with a kid in the mix. I'm also worried about how this'll hit my family, especially my mom, who's already a wreck over it all. I'm trying to figure out the smartest way to handle this without stirring up more chaos. I'd love any advice or takes you all have on navigating this twist. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Hey everyone, I've got another update because things keep shifting, and it's a lot to juggle. After learning about my ex's pregnancy, stuff got uglier in my family. My mom's been barely holding it together. It's obvious her marriage is crumbling. My stepdad's understandably ticked off about the whole ordeal, and they've been clashing hard. It's brutal seeing my mom in so much agony, especially since she's been trying to prop me up through this. As for my stepbrother, the rest of the family's done with him. My aunts and uncles are livid about what he pulled, and they've made it crystal clear they're cutting him off. I think this piles even more pressure on my mom. She feels like she's losing her son and her marriage at once. It's a rotten spot for her, and I ache for her, but I've got to keep my own head above water too. I've been trying to support my mom as much as I can, but it's tough when I'm still sorting out my own mess. I'm also wrestling with how to deal with my ex and the baby. I know I've got to talk to her soon, but I'm clueless about how to approach it. Thanks again for all your support and wisdom. It's been a brutal ride, but I'm thankful for this crew to lean on. I'll keep you posted as things roll on. I live in California if y'all are wondering, but soon I'm moving to Maryland.